Today's is about a boy whose father imprisons him in an animal cage, and to see him suffer his food and water was stopped, and every day he was tortured. This cruel father used to say to his son that living in this cage was a punishment for his sins, but the truth was that he was showing his brutality on his own child in the name of God. Now will this child be able to escape from his cruel father? Keep watching to know the full story. A psychological mystery thriller movie named Dogman. At the beginning of this story we see a man named Douglas who he is caught at a police checkpoint while smuggling several dogs with him. Douglas is seriously injured. Douglas is questioned extensively, as if he had been beaten up by a gang of thugs, but his case was beyond everyone's understanding, so at midnight the case was transferred to Dr. Evelyn. A psychiatrist by profession visits Douglas and asks him, "Where were you taking so many dogs with you?" To which Douglas replies, "These dogs are my family, they follow me wherever I go, they're always around me. Even if I don't want him to be." Evelyn wanted to know. Douglas knew that if he told half the truth, so like everyone else she will also think him mad, so he starts from his childhood. He says that his father was a cruel man. When Douglas was 9 years old, then he saw his father making the pet dogs fight with each other, and he kept those animals hungry for many days so that those dogs fight among themselves even for a straw of food, and he did this just for his own pleasure. Douglas's brother was also exactly like his father, and there was no humanity in both of them, but Douglas was not like them. He loved those animals and those dogs loved Douglas very much. One day he feeds the dogs that his father had kept hungry for many days. His father does not understand why these dogs are not fighting with each other. Why would they fight when Douglas was secretly feeding them? But this routine of feeding did not last long, because his brother sees him feeding his share of food to those dogs, and he tells this to his father, and at dinner his father asks Douglas, "Did you feed those dogs out of fear?" Douglas tells the truth, after which his father locks him in the same animal cage, and he says that from now on these animals are his family and this cage became his home. That man expressed his frustration of not getting entertainment. It was derived from the tears of a 9-year-old child, and from now on his condition, which was getting worse day by day, became the source of his happiness. Douglas's mother wanted to save her son, but she was forced to, and one day Douglas sees her leaving that house and running away. Douglas tells Evelyn that he had never seen the school building. There were some magazines lying in his cage. Evelyn is surprised to know that she learned to read and write by watching them, that Douglas stayed in that cage for so many years that he couldn't even remember the count. His father also blames Douglas for his mother's departure, and now his condition was getting worse. Douglas's brother tells him that you are God's lost sheep, just pray, because the only punishment for your sins is death. Evelyn asks him, "If they imprisoned you like this, so how do you get out of that cage?" Whereupon Douglas tells him that one day a female dog gave birth to some puppies. "I kept him away from the eyes of my father and brothers, but one day his brother saw those kids drinking their mother's milk, and then he did what he always did. He told Dad about those kids. His father wanted to kill those children, but Douglas came in between to save them. The man had a gun in his hand, and despite his repeated requests, Douglas did not move out of his way, after which the man shoots at Douglas. In this attack, the bullet hit Douglas's hand and one of his fingers got cut off. Douglas was lying injured on the ground, but instead of helping him, his brother asks God for forgiveness for his sins, and he gives him a handkerchief and goes away from there. Douglas had learned to talk to those dogs after staying with them for so many years. He shows one of them a picture of a police car, and he tells her to take my severed finger to this car and bring them here. The dog uses his intelligence to find the police, after which the police chase him and come to Douglas's house. He is put in a cage and an ambulance is immediately called, and Douglas's father and his brother are arrested by the police. Douglas tells Evelyn that it was the best day of his life, but it would have been Even better if a piece of that bullet hadn't bounced off and hit his spine. Douglas was left permanently disabled by the bullet that hit him, and the doctors told him that his bone marrow was slowly dying, which meant that he will live much less than a normal person for such a big crime. Douglas' cruel father was sentenced to 20 years and his brother to 12 years. The man who kept others in cages could not tolerate it when he himself had to live in prison, and Douglas's father committed suicide within 2 years. On the other hand, his brother, who was sentenced to 12 years, was given a remission of 4 years for his good behavior, and he was released from jail in just 8 years. But his happiness did not last long, because Douglas's pet dogs were the same dogs with which he was imprisoned. As soon as he comes out of jail, they attack him in a group, and her brother dies a painful death, which he probably deserved. Evelyn wanted to know who made him like this. Who is it that you were running away from that night? After this, we are again shown a flashback where we see a girl. The guy who came to meet Douglas tells him that there's a new gangster in town, and he forcibly collects weekly payments from vulnerable people. Initially we had no problem in giving him money, but now he is increasing the amount he collects every week out of fear. My aunt had to send her old stuff and save money for the week, but we don't have any money left for next week, and if we don't pay him, so his goons will harm us. Douglas says, "Don't be afraid, I will do something." He tells her to go home without worry, and the next day we see the extortion mafia, and Douglas had to teach this man a tough lesson, and on his signal a dog came out holding the phone in its mouth, enters his bar, and Douglas sends another dog after him. The little dog with strong jaws and sharp teeth puts the phone on the table of the mafia boss and asks him to talk to Douglas. As soon as the boss picks up the phone, that dog with sharp teeth takes his private part in his mouth. This is how Douglas has pinned him down as his target, and he tells the mafia boss, "You can collect money from whoever you want, but don't take money from that laundry lady." He asks her to say yes to the deal, or else his dog would chew off her private parts. Out of fear, the mafia boss accepts his offer, and he says that "my people will not harass that woman again," after which Douglas's dogs spare his life. Douglas taught him a lesson, but in doing so he made a new enemy. Evelyn asks, "Were you sent to a care home after your rescue? You didn't make any friends there?" To which Douglas replies that "I was taken out of one cage and sent to another cage where there were many other children like him, but he was scared, beaten by life, unable to unite. He just followed the process of survival." Evelyn asks, "So you haven't loved anyone in all these years?" At first Douglas denies it, but then he says, "Yes, there was a girl, her name was Salma, and she was much older than me. Salma taught me how to do makeup, and she would tell him stories from Shakespeare, and he felt very alive with her, and I became what I wanted to be." Douglas could never express his love to her because one day she left him. Salma was a good actress, and he started getting movie offers based on his talent. Douglas used to keep every article published on him. He completed his studies, and he just wanted to meet Salma once and express his feelings to her. Douglas buys a very expensive ticket to see her perform. He, sitting in the crowd, claps loudly after the show is over, but due to his disability he is unable to get up from the chair and gets lost in the crowd of people. A bodyguard tells Salma that a big fan of yours wants to meet you. Douglas comes in front of him, and as soon as Salma sees him she recognizes him and is really happy to see him. Douglas gifts her a book which he had made for her with his own hands. Before Douglas could say anything more to her, we see a man coming to meet Salma, and she finds out that this man was Salma's future husband and that Salma was going to be the mother of his child. Douglas was heartbroken to see her with someone else, and he realized it that day that people can only pity me. No one loves people like that. Why would a big and beautiful personality like Salma love a handicapped boy like him? Douglas was very angry that day, and he got up from his wheelchair and started shouting. Seeing him in such pain, his pet dogs come out of their cages and sit around him, and that day Douglas realized that no one in this world loved him except his animals. He changes again, and this time he is completely lost, which Douglas finds out the next day that the government was demolishing her dog shelter due to lack of funds. He forbids government officials from doing so, but this order came from above, after which one day Douglas escapes from that place taking those dogs with him. He goes to an abandoned building, and from now on this was his new home. After that day he never met Salma again. They had 2 children and she quit acting, which was probably the biggest mistake of her life, because within a few years her husband became an alcoholic, and within no time Salma's acting career and her stardom vanished. Douglas tried hard to find a job to support his family, but no one was willing to hire him because he was handicapped. Douglas realized that day that when it comes to money, so no one feels sorry for you. Wandering in search of a job, one day he comes to a bar. This was a bar of the LGBTQ community where boys used to sing on stage wearing makeup like girls. Thanks to Salma, Douglas knew how to perform on stage and he had no problem with girly makeup either, but the showrunner tells him that people come here for entertainment, nobody wants to see a handicapped person on stage, after which Douglas shows him how to stand on his feet, and seeing him doing so, all the girls standing there request him to give them a chance. Once Douglas is made up and prepared for the show, before going on stage he tells the girls that I can't stand for long. You hold me when my legs start shaking. Douglas goes on stage, and when he starts singing everyone goes crazy. She sang so well that day that the showrunner had tears in his eyes. After the show ends, Douglas almost falls down, but he had won everyone's heart today. After that day he started performing on that stage every Friday, and soon it became his identity. Now, since Douglas's dogs obeyed everything he said, he also started stealing. With their help, his dogs would enter some rich man's house every night and they would steal all the valuables. Incidents of theft were increasing in the city, and when the police investigates the case, a policeman sees Douglas in many CCTV footage. He was handicapped, so finding him was not a big deal. His suspicions are confirmed when he sees Douglas performing on stage wearing the stolen jewelry. He follows Douglas to his home and tells him that I want my share in this theft of yours. Douglas had no interest in money, so he gives him everything, but the policeman calls him crazy before leaving and he makes fun of his condition, after which, on Douglas's orders, his dogs tear the policeman to pieces and eat him. Douglas confessed to Evelyn the murder of a policeman, which shows that he had no fear of the law. He says that after that, I never had the situation to kill anyone, nor did I want to kill anyone, but last night something happened that I didn't expect at all. The mafia boss with whom I had a deal broke into my house last night looking for me. We see that he kills that girl too, and his next victim was Douglas. When Douglas hears the sound of gunfire, he tells his dogs to hide, and we see that he had set up traps all over the house. Douglas manages to kill several of them, but the mafia boss attacks him with a machine gun and injures him. Douglas says that there was a deal between us, but the mafia boss thought that he was the manifestation of the devil and that he must be killed. He was about to shoot Douglas. That's when he ran out of pills. Douglas says it seems that today even your God did not support you, after which his dogs kill that boss. The police reached there within a short time. So many murders had happened and only Douglas was left alive. That's why the police arrested Douglas for questioning. He knew that no one will take care of his family after he is gone, and that's why Douglas, like every time, tries to escape with his dogs this time too, but it was his luck that later on he got caught, and now he was sitting with Evelyn and answering her questions. This is how he told Evelyn his entire story from beginning to end, after which Evelyn asks him that why did you tell all this to me only to which Douglas tells her that there is one thing common between both of us, and that is pain. I felt that pain as soon as I saw you. Evelyn says I will do whatever I can to help you legally. I will definitely do that, but Douglas tells her that you have already helped me a lot. Perhaps I will have to pay the ultimate price for the right to live with my family. Evelyn walks away, but we see that his dogs were standing outside the police station and watching him. They all gathered together and attacked the police station and they freed Douglas, and he stands on his feet again and he comes staggering in front of the church and says to God, I have confessed all my crimes, now do me justice. Saying this he falls down, and here we can clearly see his weakness. His dogs surround him from all sides, which shows that he is the only one who truly loved her. Douglas considered God responsible for the atrocities committed against him and blamed him for it. He takes his last breath in the hope that now he might get relief from this pain. On the other hand, one of his dogs goes to Evelyn's house. Evelyn's estranged husband used to torture her, and after Douglas leaves, his dogs will protect Evelyn and her daughter just like they did with that. And the movie ends here.